Jay here, Stretford, Paddock. As you can see, I'm outside Old Trafford with the paper tuck and it's absolutely freezing. I've got a parka and a hoodie on and I'm so cold I could almost start crying, but I won't. We'll get straight into it, and the latest stories this morning doing the rounds. The first one is about Bruno Fernandes. Don't know if you heard of him. Pretty decent. Plays Manchester United. Scores the odd absolute worldie. There's talk about his new contract now. The club have offered him a new deal, and apparently, depending on who you believe, he's thinking about it, he's in negotiations, or he's stalling. Now, the Daily Express have gone with the headline here, and again, you can sort of decide for yourselves how much weight you put behind the Daily Express and their headlines, but they're saying that he's stalling on a new contract as worrying details emerge. Now, they're saying he's been offered a deal. I think it's he's as a sort of extension. He just signed obviously he came in 2020, did really well. He was on about 80 grand a week, I think, when he came in, which, you know, it's not too shabby, but compared to some of his teammates, wasn't a lot. He's had a pay rise since, and now they're offering him a new deal. And there's talk that he's going to wait and see how the season plays out before committing to a new deal. Now, we've ran this story several times, and it's been developing. There's been different sides to it. It first came out in The Athletic that the club have offered him a new deal. The negotiations have begun, and it depends how you look at it. You can look at it as though, okay, those negotiations are ongoing. There's not any real drama there. You know, it's quite normal. You can look at it as though he's waiting to see how the season pans out, whether Manchester United's ambitions match his own or whatever. I'm not quite concerned at the moment, because I think that Bruno Fernandes, whilst, you know, desperate to see him stay at United, I think he is committed to United. As I said earlier, he's had his pay has gone up, and there is every reason to believe that he wants to make a success of it here. So I don't think it's panic stations by any stretch of the imagination, but we do want to see him commit long term to Manchester United, because he's such a phenomenal talent. The last thing we can afford now is Bruno Fernandes to get his head turned, or for another club to come in. Obviously, he's still got a few years left on his current deal. We only signed him last year, so it's not like it's desperate measures, but we want to get him tied to a long-term deal and him committed to the future of the club, because, as I said earlier, he's a phenomenal talent. We need to keep him, especially in the summer when you look at it and it looks like Paul Pogba is going to leave. Then the last thing we can afford is, I'm not saying that Bruno Fernandes would leave in the summer, but is to have both midfielders not committed long term. So I expect Bruno Fernandes to sign that deal, and I'm not too worried about it at the moment, but the sooner the better, because what would we do without Bruno? I think we'd be jumping in the air, we'll be crying our eyes out. We need to keep him. Another story doing the rounds is one about David De Gea, how he must earn his place, according to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. This is a story, I think this is done in the Mail, following costly blunders in the draw against Everton as Dean Henderson waits in the wings. We know that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, David De Gea, had a bit of a stinker against Everton. Definitely to blame for Everton's first goal. You can also point the finger at him for the third as well. Was he strong enough? Did he come out of his box quick enough, or come out of his off his line? Quick enough? Probably not. And it's not the first time this season there's been a few question marks around him. Not the worst season. This season has been a little bit better. There has been a couple of performances that have, made people doubt it. I think the Leipzig game in the Champions League away was one of them. But this season's been better than last season. Last season, there seems to be quite a few mistakes. And I don't think David De Gea has been at his best for about 18 months now. I think there's been these sort of, maybe even a bit longer, since Spurs away at Wembley, when we won 1-0, where he was fantastic. I think since then, he's had these sort of mistakes in him. I don't want to say every week, because that's a bit of an exaggeration, but at least every month there's been one or two mistakes that people have been pointing out and that we can't help but notice, which has been very un-David De Gea-like. And now, obviously, with Dean Henderson coming back from Sheffield United, there's talk that he may be coming into the side. Now, I actually think the West Ham game this week is a perfect opportunity for both Dean Henderson and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because I think that's a game that Dean Henderson probably would have played in anyway, because it's the Cup. So Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has a sort of ready-made excuse almost to say, right, I was always going to play Dean Henderson for this game. I'm bringing him in, and it doesn't look like, I've dropped David De Gea, so it sort of gets rid of all that drama that can go with dropping your goalkeeper. So we'll see what happens, whether Ole Gunnar Solskjaer does go with Dean Henderson, but we can't afford to keep dropping points or to have these blunders. The defence isn't ultra reliable anyway, so you need a goalkeeper who is a little bit more reliable, and David De Gea hasn't been quite himself over the last 2 years, like I said, so we'll see what happens with that. Sorry to go back and forth, but another Bruno Fernandes story, because we can never get enough Bruno Fernandes stories, is that United could make a decision following a FIFA ruling on whether he can play, Bruno Fernandes can play for Portugal next month, because there's like these sort of quarantine rules, and apparently United could prevent Bruno Fernandes from going on international duty with Portugal next month due to issues around quarantine. Portugal is one of the countries on the government's red list, meaning anyone that visits the European country would be required to spend 10 days in isolation after returning to the UK. Fernandes would normally be part of the Portugal squad to play Azerbaijan, Serbia and Luxembourg at the end of March, but he could face missing games against Brighton and away to Tottenham in April if he did that. So apparently United can stop that from happening, and it goes on to say the Scousers also have players there that they can stop playing. I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one. The last thing I want to see is Bruno Fernandes miss any games. I think, we know how sort of reliant we are on him, as I said earlier. So if he is going to miss any games because of international duty and quarantine and all that sort of stuff, then that'd be ridiculous. And if United can stop that, then I'm sorry, Portugal, but that's just the way it's going to be. One final story as well. I'm going to touch on this later on in the week when we've got David. We almost said David De Gea then. We haven't got David De Gea. We've got David Pritting for the Academy review. James Garner is having a bit of a time of it at Nottingham Forest, a good time of it, I hasten to add, not a bad one. He's been likened to Busquets by some of the Nottingham Forest fans. I don't know how true that is, but he's had a couple of good games there since he's gone out on loan, so that's something to keep an eye on, and we'll be keeping you updated on that, because the Forest fans and the Forest press are absolutely raving about him, and it's what we want to see, because I think he went for Watford. He was sort of fell out of favour there, or they got a new manager in, gone over to Forest and has sort of hit the ground running. And who knows what could happen with Jimmy Garner. I think he's 19, 20? He's only young still, so if he can make a success of his loan move, then he could be one for the future at Manchester United, because that position, that sort of, deep line midfielder, is one we need, that sort of CDM almost. I know he can be a bit more box to box, but there's definitely a role for James Garner to play here in the future at Manchester United, when you look at the age of Nemanja Matic and the fact that it seems that if we do have Fred and McTominay, more often than not we play them together, so we need someone who can come in there longer term. Maybe here's the answer, but he's certainly having a good time of it, and like I said earlier, we'll keep you updated with that, and we'll go into more detail with that when we have the Academy review with David Pritt. I'm going to wrap it up because I'm absolutely freezing and the cold is moving down to my special place. This has been the Paper Talk at Old Trafford. As you'll expect, throughout the week we'll have the preview later on today, looking towards the West Ham game. Then on the West Ham game we'll have the watch along, then all the fan cams and all that good stuff as well, as you can expect. We'll also have Academy review, as I said. We'll have the Premier League P-Take, I don't swear on this, with McCullough and Joe. We'll also have the Paddock podcast, and later on in the week, Howson's Brew. So make sure you are subscribing, liking and sharing on the channel. Thanks for watching.